Hey, everybody, welcome back to What Would You Change, the movie podcast by the Super Monkey Fighters. I am, of course, Loki, here with Papa Nugget and Monkey Feathers. This week, we jumped into my favorite movie of all time, hands down. Memento, directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Christopher Nolan, based on a screenplay from his brother, or based on a short story, rather, from his brother Jonathan Nolan. It stars Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, Joe Pantoliano, Mark Boone Jr., Stephen Tobolowsky, who you will know, Harriet Sansom Harris, who you will know as the female Stephen Tobolowsky, as well as Callum Keith Rennie, who you will probably notice if you watched Battlestar Galactica, and one other face pops up that you will know, if you know, and that is Thomas Lennon. He plays the doctor in one random scene, and he was the chief of police from, what was that show called? Reno 911. Yes, so. It is a man with short-term memory loss attempts to track down his wife's murderer. This movie is also famous as the movie that plays backwards, which is only...
But the one before Tenet.
There are color sequences, there are black and white sequences, and the color sequences are played in order, and they alternate back and forth between them. So they go forward to
reverse
forward
chronologically.
Yeah,
and then the color ones go backwards. And so it's really a movie that moves from point A and point C towards point B. And that's really how I would summarize this film. So we already know this is my favorite movie. What did you two think about it?
So I remember when I first saw this back in the early 2000s, really liking it. But then I hadn't really watched it or haven't even thought about it since then. And I think it's one of those, I think the reason I liked it initially, thinking back, was because it was different. It didn't fit the standard R. It was trying to do something wildly different in the way that it was telling the story. But the way that the function of telling the story kind of fits in with the ailment that Leonard has. Yeah. And so those it kind of marries those up together in a unique way of telling the story. So I think that's what really stood out to me, and would stand out to anyone watching this film.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that like you get into and like you're not going to get it the first time. Like I don't think anyone's going to fully comprehend everything watching it only once. And I think that's probably what leads to its appeal. That like you're trying to figure it out as you watch it. So it's kind of like you're playing detective along with him, trying to make sense of it all.
It's a great way to handle the kind of the noirish detective element, right? Because not only is he just trying to solve this crime, he's trying to navigate his life, just everyday situations, and he's I think that adds to that detective story where you don't know what's going on, he doesn't know what's going on, and it's easier to identify with him because you're both just completely in the dark the entire time. So.
And preparing for this podcast, like I don't even know how many times I ended up watching it. I watched it like a handful of times to try to really understand what was going on with both the way it was being told and then the story itself. And so, I'm actually surprised that it had as much as well of a reception as it did. For that fact, I wouldn't actually see this appealing to like the broad kind of general market.
Well, I think that's kind of part of why it was, how it was received, right? It came out at a time when independent films were kind of the thing. I think it's definitely one that people go back to more because of the trajectory of Christopher Nolan's career. So,
well, I think that's going to depend because if you're more of the film artsy side, I think you're bound to go back to it. But if you're just one of those people who want a no thinking movie, you might go back to one of his, like The Dark Knight, or
You're going to go back to Batman.
Yeah, you're going to go back to
That's-
Batman.
Yeah.
And maybe even like Prestige, because I think that might also be one of the, if you're thinking more artsy films, but not the full-blown artsy films, I think someone would go back to Prestige over Memento.
I would say my advice, if you watched Tenet and said, that was really cool, but I have no idea what was going on, you'll definitely enjoy Memento and probably understand what's going on. So, at least after your first one, maybe your first second watching, but.
Even watching through Memento, because we were talking about, it plays backwards. It doesn't just play backwards. And we talked about the opening scene that does, which I think is a really cool opening scene. It kind of sets up how this movie's going to, progress. But the way that this plays out is the colored sequences, it'll take like the first, well, I shouldn't say the first, but like the last 5 minutes and play them through as a normal scene, and then it'll jump back the next 5 minutes and then play through the scene. Yeah. So it's not like it's just playing backwards. It does go forward. It leapfrogs.
Well, I think it's the big difference between Christopher Nolan's first film, Following, which is a broken narrative as well. It's not backwards. It's just you see things out of order. And it's kind of, I think the lesson learned from that one is you need to have some kind of anchor or consistency throughout it so that people have something to, it's a path.
They aren't completely lost.
Yeah. You're still guiding them through it. You're just guiding them through, because the way the events line out, you're like, well, the important thing's in the middle, and then you get to the end and you're just kind of like, that's just a run-of-the-mill story. It's nothing really crazy. But if you break it up and you show people things in different orders, you get to the conclusion, a different conclusion to the film in the middle of it. And you understand events that happened in the future because of what happened in the past after you've seen them. And so it's, but having that anchor, especially with the sequences that play, you'll always see there's something that links them, right? There's remember Sammy Jenkins when he's looking at his hand, like, one scene begins with that, the next scene will end on that kind of thing. And so you can kind of tell what's going to happen, and it helps you piece all of that stuff together a little bit better. So, but I think it also allows for some of my favorite moments in any film ever. There's the two of them when he's sitting on the toilet holding a bottle of whiskey and just says, well, I don't feel drunk. He has no idea why he's there and what's going on. Because and then just decides to take a shower. Which might seem really weird, but when you understand how he operates as a person, the systems that he's built, like, I'm in the bathroom, clearly, I was here for a reason. I stink. I guess I was going to take a shower. I don't recognize this bathroom, but that's what I'm going to do. And then the other sequence is just before that, after that, depending on how you film layout or after, he's running through a trailer park and he's like, okay, what's going on? Oh, I guess I'm chasing this guy. And then he runs towards him and gets shot at. He says, nope, he's chasing me. just those moments are just standout moments for me in film. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. If you played the movie forward, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, he'd be running along and then all of a sudden he'd just stop and look around and be like, what's going on? And he'd be like, all right, this gimmick's up. I've got it. Like, let's move on. But playing it backwards, it makes perfect sense because you're as confused as he is.
You're following him as he's trying to unravel where he's at and what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I think the black and white scenes, even if you're confused in the color scenes, like, you can still have that foothold in the black and white scenes and understand what's going on to at least carry you forward into the film to the point where you can start understanding it, because it really all comes together, or at least you get closure in the end. If you can if you can at least stick with it and not fully grasp what's going on, it kind of resolves itself, which is
and those
good.
Black and white scenes they're just exposition. I mean, he's sitting in a hotel room talking on the phone, and little pieces of the puzzle are revealing themselves along the way. But it's also, showcasing more of the manipulation that's happening to him, and how pretty much everybody takes advantage of it for their own gain, even with the ones who are trying to help him. And that's, I don't know, that's kind of what I looked at this time, because I've seen it a dozen times, and so the big thing that stood out to me that I really, really appreciated this time was Carrie-Anne Moss's performance.
Yeah.
Because it really stood out as the sequence when they're in the diner and she's got the glasses on and has been beat up and gives him the license plate information. That's later in the film, or later in the timeline
story
of events, but it's early on in the film though what you see. And so the first couple of times you see it, you just kind of fall into that she's genuinely trying to help him. But this time around, it really, really stood out as to how manipulative she was being. Like,
yeah,
she
that was
yeah,
one of those sequences that she just, because if you look at the movie in chronological time frame, she finds out that the main protagonist, he is wearing her boyfriend's clothes and he's driving her car, and she doesn't know why. I'm sure she suspects why, but she doesn't quite know why. And so she's kind of talking with this guy, and she realizes his condition, and all of a sudden she's then, I can use this to my advantage, to where she's manipulating him. And the one scene that really stood out to me was the whole house scene. She's able to manipulate him into believing that what he did to her was actually someone like
else,
crazy. Yeah. But she just jumped into it and said, "Oh, I'm going to manipulate this guy to my benefit." Yeah. And it's pretty crazy.
Well, and she uses basically his, I don't know what you'd call it, his logic or his what he's put in place to kind of help guide him through
his
condition, memory loss. His procedures. So she kind of uses those against him, knowing what he does. And so since she has that kind of insider information, then she's like, well, I can exploit this.
Yeah.
Well, and that's ultimately what he does to himself as well. Like, there's a point where he realizes that people have been doing this to him, and so he can do it to himself to continue. You know, he's like, he doesn't know what's going to happen, but he knows if I do this thing this way, it will change events.
He knows how he'll react to it.
And I know how I'll react to it later, and, you know, it'll work. And so that's exactly what he does. And that's the point of the film, and that's the kind of his final sequence where he's talking about, I have to believe the world exists when my eyes are closed. It's referenced to a bunch of times in the film that's what he's talking about, and he's just continually doing it, and he has to believe that the world exists outside of him, and how can he navigate that and manipulate that? And that's ultimately what he does. It's ultimately what everybody does. I mean, even the hotel, they're renting him 2 different rooms because he's going to walk back in and he'd be like, oh yeah, you don't have a room here. And then away they go. So
see, and I didn't understand how that works. Like, do they just charge him at different times so he doesn't realize he's paying for 2 rooms? But the thing is, does he have a transaction log like on a credit card or like?
You wouldn't have to rent him 2 rooms because he was paying cash.
Just charge him twice.
You didn't just charge him twice, and there you go. Or tell him that the rates are triple, and that way you go. Like, but the point is everybody's manipulating him, and even that guy's just kind of like, he's honest about it, and he seems like the only person who's actually kind of a friend to him, but not really. Like, he's like, my boss is making me do this. I think it's stupid, but whatever. Like, and he's just he's the only one who just kind of treats him genuinely. Like, okay, you've got this thing, and this is the world that we live in, so this is what's going to happen. So I think that one of the biggest things that I like about this, every time I see it, is how neatly and nicely it does wrap up. I do like ambiguity in movies. We do talk about that kind of a thing. But this one really does. It's a fairly contained story, and you're not really left guessing too much.
It wraps up the plot, but it still leaves like there's still a future at the end. That like
It leaves
you know where
interpretation
it's
and-
probably going, but
Yeah.
like you don't know the details of where
Yeah.
how it's going to play out.
But the story itself of what's going on with what's being told to you, they don't leave any loose ends on that kind of a thing, right? They leave the world open for interpretation, but you're not like, well, what happened about this, and what about this, and what about that? And I guess maybe you could say Natalie would sort of be that, but not really, because she gets what she wanted in the end. Thinking through it as from a plot standpoint, there's not really anything left unresolved, right? Everything kind of gets, even the thing that you might think of is like, oh, well, did he really get his actual killer or not? Yeah, he did. Like you see the photo of it, you get that closure throughout all of that. So I think that's one of the big things that I've always liked about this. There's always been satisfactory about it. Any other likes you guys want to go through?
Well, I have one, and it's actually the creative choice in this movie, which is to have the different color sequences between the black and white and then the actual color. I think that helps break up the story and make it make sense as much as it can. Because I think if it was all black and white or if it was all in color, I think people would get confused more easily.
Well,
and
how those sequences blend, the moment that they transition, is a genius way of doing that.
And that is something that I really did enjoy because, the beginning of the movie, it shows things going in reverse because he took a picture of the dead body and then the photo goes into the camera and the bullet goes back up into the gun and things like that. But then the end of the movie, which is the middle of the sequences, the timeline, you have him shaking out the photo and then the picture itself turns into color as it develops. So I thought that was a real genius way to blend the two timelines.
It's not just there's a cut and all of a sudden now we're here. It's these two sequences are merging, and they merge through the device that he had. The way he keeps track of people and things is through Polaroids, and so you do that where he's, it's those subtle little things that just like make things enjoyable. And I think there's a lot of those kinds of things that they're nuts and bolts of filmmaking that I think a lot of people miss with a lot of filmmaking is they're like, oh no, we need to have the big moment. We need to have the big reveal of the villain. And that's what's going to make everybody love our movie. And it's like, no, you got to do all those subtle things along the way as well.
Have it click.
And the things people don't even realize, like you probably don't realize that it transitioned to color. Like it's a development into it that takes time, just like developing a Polaroid. And so you probably don't even realize that it happened, and then it is. And you're just so used to the film going back and forth between the two that, it's there, and there you go. So it's an interesting one. I know that there is a cut, a chronological cut of the film. I've never actually seen it. I don't think I actually want to in thinking through it all, but it might be actually really interesting. Especially, I think the interesting arc in that one, I think, would be Joe Pantoliano's arc from the chronological. So to see the way the film portrays it, he gets more and more desperate towards the end of the film, which is the middle of the timeline, but there's reasons why that is, and he's trying to take care of Leonard and the situation that they're in, the crimes that they've committed. He's trying to get him out of town, but he can't because Leonard doesn't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. So the tattoo parlor sequence where he's kind of frazzled, he just barely found the keys that Leonard had thrown. So just understanding that from a chronological standpoint might make sense, but I think the only one that would really be interesting would be that storyline. I think everything else would just kind of be like, this is run-of-the-mill noir, murder mystery sort of thing, kinda.
Detective novel.
But it would also end, I don't know, maybe it would be interesting now that I think about it, because it would end, the end of the sequence of the film would be Lenny killing Teddy. but we would all know that Teddy wasn't the guy, but Leonard would think it was the guy. So I don't know. Maybe that would be a great twist as well.
I'm torn, but I'm going to mention it. So even though I like everything that we've already talked about, like, I still don't know how much I enjoy the way that everything's cut up, just from a regular person audience watch of the film. I don't think it, like I just imagine, like, I'm going to go with my parents and watch this or something, like, or we're going to watch it. And, like,
it's an acquired taste.
This is a movie that you sit down by yourself and watch, or people that like these kind of things. Like, I don't feel like this is a movie night movie. Like,
no, this
isn't like, you have to watch it multiple times. And that's why I say I'm torn. Like, I'm not saying, like, it's bad because it doesn't fit that type, but I'm just, it's a specific type of movie.
Before we get into Monkey Feathers, dislike and change, because it's for me, it's kind of like Nugget, where it's a good and a bad, because it is explained and it makes, it's explained. I wouldn't necessarily say it makes sense, but the entire time that Leonard is in the film and the color sequences, the way that's presented to you, he's wearing a suit that doesn't fit him, but it makes sense because it's his stolen suit. He took it off of somebody else. That's one of those things that maybe doesn't quite jive with me or make sense of why he does that. Like, there's a reason why he takes the car, is because he's setting these things up, but he takes the guy's clothes before any of that happens. Like, he still thinks he's the guy who killed his wife when he does that. At no point does he question, like, he lives by habit and routine, and he's conditioned himself to know these things, but he's wearing clothes that don't fit him, and doesn't question it. It's just like, all right, whatever. It's annoyed me in the past, but it still does. And I think that will be my dislike for the film, is even though it's explained and it makes sense, and you're like, oh no, I get why he's wearing a suit that doesn't fit him the entire time now. That's cool. I just don't see why he
doesn't realize it.
Clothes with a man, or why he doesn't realize that, these clothes feel weird. You would think that's one of those things that would instantly feel off to him the entire time. Like, the recognition that he says, he's got to read people, so he has to look them in the eye to see if, and he does very good at that, where he's like, oh no, we've talked before. I don't remember it, but we've talked before. Like, the clothes not fitting right would be something that you would notice. Like,
and that would be
pants that are 5 sizes too big.
Way back in his past. Like, it's not like he just forgets how clothes feel. Yeah.
And it's a weird, like, the way that it's explained, where it's just like, I don't even know why. Like, and he says, he's telling the guy to take his clothes off, and he's like, I don't want to get blood on him. It's like, why are you taking his clothes anyway? Like, I don't get. There's maybe more to that it wasn't explained, like a deleted scene or something. I don't know. That's my dislike. So
I dislike the fact that you know the end of this timeline, because it's how the movie starts out. What I dislike is there doesn't appear to be justice for this main character. He goes and he basically kills people, and he forgets about doing it, but there is no justice to his actions. And he
doesn't get justice?
Yeah, that's
meaning that he's killed people, but he's not getting arrested for it. And you don't know, of course, because with how the movie begins, who knows? Maybe he walks out of that abandoned building and then there's like 100 cops waiting to arrest him or whatever. You don't know. But he basically is just going around killing people, and he's justifying it in his brain. That I didn't like, because it's basically you're rationalizing being a killer, and you're using your condition to kill other people. And I'm not sure that was meant to be or what, but I disliked that there was no justice to his actions. and that he was at the end of the film or the beginning of the film or however you want to see it, he was getting away with murder because he killed Jimmy and then he killed Teddy. And
Before that, he had killed at least one other person.
Yeah, and probably more than one other person.
Probably more than
Teddy,
one other. Yep.
Because Teddy's been helping him or manipulating him to do his bidding. But his justification of, can't remember exactly how it's phrased in the movie, but basically he's going to use his condition to get justice on anyone who's done him wrong. I don't like that.
I think it's more that he's...
Basically, what Wikipedia says is explains that he's willing to lie to himself in order to get justice against anyone who has wronged him.
And that's, I mean, I think he's very specifically talking about Teddy. Like, do I lie to myself to be happy? In your case, Teddy, I will. I think that's the line that he's talking about.
But if he's done it with Teddy, though,
he's done.
Is it likely that he's going to continue the cycle and do it with other people?
But that's what makes it good, in my opinion, because it is a psychological thriller. If you arrest him, it's like, okay, he got arrested. That's the end. Well,
and ultimately, whatever happens to him, whether he gets caught or he doesn't, ultimately he's going to probably end up in a facility. He's the scene of Sammy Jenkins sitting there, and then it flashes to him really quick, like as a doctor walks by. That's his future. I mean, that's what that scene is really showcasing is, because whether he actually gets his revenge or not, he's never going to know. And the implications of that lying to ourselves to be happy, because that's what Teddy says to him beforehand. Like, that's what you've been doing this entire time, Leonard. Like, you got the guy and it didn't stick. It didn't make any difference. And so as people, that's what we do. We lie to ourselves to make ourselves happy. That's what Teddy's doing with how he's manipulating Leonard. That's how Carrie-Anne Moss is doing this. Like, that's what all of these people are doing. And so Leonard was kind of outside of that, but not really. And so it's...
Yeah, I just thinking through it, and because you're in a way left with an ambiguous ending, I just don't think that he should get away with his actions. And that's something that I would change. Because maybe instead of like the beginning of the film where he's taking a picture of a dead body and it's slowly unwrapping from there, maybe it's him in a police interrogation room and it's unraveling from there. And then he was arrested for what he did, but you're trying to figure out why he was arrested. Like what happened from there.
He writes on the Polaroid of Teddy that has Teddy's body, I got it, I did it. And he goes to a tattoo parlor and gets the tattoo on his chest and says, I did it. But then he lives out the rest of his life. The last thing he remembers is his wife dying, that he needs to go and find the murderer until he sees that chest tattoo. Like he's the justice I think that you're looking for. And I don't disagree with maybe making that change to where it starts differently, where he's in police custody or something like that, and he's happy because of what he found. He's happy at the beginning of the film, and then we find out that it's not really, like, it's a false happiness. Like, you can still have the same revelation by doing that. But the kind of justice you're looking for, Leonard can't actually have, because he will forget 10 minutes later what's going on. Like, it will just be torture to him, just to torture him. Like, he will never have remorse for something he doesn't remember doing. And that's,
Yeah. I mean, either way, that was something that really stood out to me by the end of the film is he killed people and he's leaving to potentially kill more people depending on how he goes about into the world. Because as we just established, he doesn't remember that he killed his wife's murderer.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember that. So is it a huge possibility that he's just going to continue going on in the world thinking that, his wife's murderer is out there. I have to find all these John G's and I'm going to murder all of them for it.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing. Teddy does establish that, Leonard has done this before because the police report is missing information. So Leonard I'm going to get rid of this page because whatever reason. I'm going to write down Teddy's license plate as this is the license plate of the guy I'm looking for, with no other information other than a postcard that says fact 6 and has a license plate number on it. And 10 minutes later, he's like, oh, I need to get this tattooed on me. Great. He doesn't know when he's getting that tattoo. He has no idea where that license plate came from, how he got that information, how that's relevant to anything. He can't connect those dots the way that he thinks he's connecting those dots. And so
I would just prefer there to be a more solid consequence to what he was doing throughout the whole film, or even in the exposition of what he was doing before. Because I don't like the idea that he's just going to continue into the world and still potentially kill other John G's, because he's not going to remember it. But that's kind of the situation. He's not going to remember that he got his wife's killer.
I feel
So
like
if he comes across another guy who has a John G name, well, maybe this guy
or
did
Jimmy,
it.
because
Yeah.
it's John or James on his tattoos. So
Yeah.
how it adapts and how it grows is how it's. I guess the way I kind of looked at it this time was it's more the cycles of violence, right? He's just out to get revenge. That's all he's alive for, right? I think if he knew that he actually had done it, like if he had the tattoo on his chest, like he would eventually kill himself because he has nothing else to live for, because the world resets for him every 10 minutes. And eventually he's going to recognize that. And every 10 minutes he's going to be like, oh, here's this thing I got to go and do, the thing I'm living for. Oh, wait, no, I already did it. I'm done. My life is now just this perpetual confusion. And he's not the type to just like retire from that, I guess. He's not going to go just live in a facility sort of a thing. He's going to continue to do that, because even if he's in a facility, he's going to continually think that I've got to go out and do this. I've got to. He's conditioned himself to do that, and so his death is the only way to get that sense of justice, both for him and actually getting his wife's killer, and for all of the things that he's done as that. And it's just because he's been hurt, he's going to continually go out and hurt. And he might not consciously be doing it because of his condition, but he made a choice at one point in time to make sure that he kept doing that. Like, what happened? Why didn't he get the tattoo when he actually got the guy? Was Teddy lying the entire time? Have they never actually found the guy? Like, was there ever a second guy? Like, was Teddy, These are questions that are all there. I think they're fairly well answered. I do believe that Teddy did help him get the guy, and he just didn't remember it. And so Teddy said, well, let's just keep going, because it gives you something to live for, effectively. I
think the point of it is the fact that it's a psychological thriller. Like, there has to be that uneasiness in it. And the fact that, he's just like creating the steps for him to just keep going. Like, to me, that's the craziness of it. And that's the impact that the film has to me. I think resolving that lessens the impact.
Any other big changes? Because other than, properly sized suits, I don't really have anything. So
I don't have anything.
Yeah. Thumbs up, thumbs down from you guys? Just depending on the mood. We kind of went over that a little bit.
It's a thumbs up, definitely.
Yeah. I know what you're getting into, because as what Nugget had said, it's probably going to take a couple of watches for you to make sense of this movie, because it's not told chronologically, and things are unfolding to you as they're unfolding to the protagonist.
And I agree with that. The addition I will make to that is each watch is probably enjoyable. Like, you're going to get something every time you watch the film. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like some movies where you're like, I don't know what I just saw. I feel like I want to watch it again just so I can understand it, but I didn't enjoy it at all. Like, so it becomes more of a chore to watch through it. I don't think this one's a chore to watch through. I think this one's enjoyable every time.
You get more out of it each time.
Yeah. It's an additive experience every time you see it. And so that's a thumbs up from us. And let us know in the comments down below what you would change about Memento, if anything at all. Tell us your thoughts on clothes that don't fit properly, particularly too large or too small. Let's not discriminate. Maybe mix and match. Like, you've got a suit jacket that's too big, but pants that are too tight. That's a weird combo. Either way, we will catch you guys in the next one, and have a good one.